Yu Menglong's justice of his death. The name Yu Menglong has always carried with it a certain quiet reverence, a whisper of artistry wrapped in gentleness, yet sharpened with the steel of determination. To speak of his death, to weigh its justice, is to wrestle with the delicate balance between the fleeting fragility of life and the eternal permanence of memory. It is not simply that Yu Menglong, beloved actor, singer, and dreamer, has passed from this world. It is that his departure has illuminated the truth of what it means to live with authenticity, to love without apology, and to leave behind a legacy that outshines the dim extinguishing of mortal breath. His death is not merely an ending, but a justice wrought in the language of time, justice to his art, to his struggles, and to his endless pursuit of beauty in a world too quick to forget. In life, Yu Menglong was a man of contradictions. He was both bold and quiet, fierce in ambition, yet tender in expression. Born in Shanghai, he emerged not from privilege, but from a relentless hunger for creation. He studied film and television directing at the Shanghai Institute of Visual Arts. Yet his destiny was not confined behind the camera. It was before it, in the space where character and soul merge. He came to prominence through web dramas, the fresh new medium of a digital era, and later blossomed into a face of mainstream television. His most iconic role in The Eternal Love made him not only a household name, but a symbol of devotion and gentleness, the kind of leading man who carried a warmth so rare in the often glittering but hollow world of fame. But fame, as it always does, took its toll. The glare of the spotlight does not allow for shadows, yet Yu Menglong was a man of shadows as much as light. He bore the weight of expectations, the scrutiny of a public that demanded perfection while rarely granting compassion. In every smile he gave, there was a trace of burden hidden beneath. In every performance, a fragment of himself sacrificed to a hungry audience. His artistry, while celebrated, cost him dearly in silence. To speak of justice in his death is also to acknowledge the injustices he endured in life, the pressure to remain flawless, the criticism sharper than applause, the loneliness masked by fanfare. His passing, though tragic, becomes in this sense a justice, a final peace granted to a man who gave everything he had for others and finally found release for himself. What makes Yu Menglong's death resound so powerfully is not merely that he was young, talented, and full of potential. It is that he represented something deeply human, the fragility of hope in a modern age. He was the dreamer who believed in love stories, in gentle gazes and unspoken words, and through his performances he allowed millions to believe too. His characters became companions to the lonely, his songs quiet companions to those who could not sleep, his smile a reassurance that sincerity still had a place in the world. His passing is not just the loss of an artist. It is the fracture of a collective dream, the abrupt silence after melody we thought would never end. And yet, death has a way of amplifying truth. In death, Yu Menglong is no longer subject to the shifting winds of fame. He cannot be touched by gossip columns, by unfair comparisons, by the suffocating machinery of an industry that exalts and then forgets. His image, frozen now in memory, is untouchable. This is the justice of his death, that he belongs not to critics but to eternity, not to fleeting trends but to the permanence of legacy. Every role he played, every note he sang, every word he spoke now takes on the weight of finality, no longer just performances but testaments. Where once he was a man trying to meet the world's expectations, now he is free to be remembered for exactly what he was, no more, no less. For his fans, his death cuts deeper than mere grief. It is a reminder of how fragile the connection between artist and admirer truly is. The people who once gathered in theaters or huddled over streaming screens to see him now gather at digital memorials, leaving messages of sorrow, of gratitude, of love. The hashtags trend, the tributes pour in, the songs are replayed until every lyric feels like a farewell. But beneath the mourning lies a fierce pride. Yu Menglong lived with authenticity, refusing to bend himself into what others demanded, choosing instead to carve his own path through the chaos of entertainment. His justice lies in the fact that his fans saw him, not just the roles he played, but the person he was. And now, in remembering, they honor him with a loyalty that transcends time. It is easy to romanticize the dead, to wrap them in perfection and erase their flaws. But Yu Menglong deserves more than that. To honor him truthfully is to remember his humanity, the way he laughed softly in interviews, the awkward pauses when words failed him, the quiet strength with which he navigated storms. He was not a myth, he was a man, and therein lies the true miracle of his legacy. He taught the world that to be gentle is not to be weak, that to dream is not to be naive, and that to love sincerely is the bravest act of all. His death is just not because he was taken too soon, but just in the sense that it completes the arc of his story, a man who gave all of himself to the world and finally rests, knowing that the world remembers him as he wished to be. To measure the justice of his death is also to ask what he has left behind. His dramas, yes, his songs, his interviews, his photos, but more importantly, the echoes of his spirit in the people who loved him. Fans who learned to hope because of him, artists who drew inspiration from his journey, strangers who found courage in his vulnerability. In this way, Yu Menglong continues to live, not in body, but in the persistence of memory and the invisible threads that bind hearts to his. Death cannot erase that. In fact, it only intensifies it. Justice here is not about fairness. It is about meaning. His death, though unjust in its timing, is just in its resonance. There is a quiet poetry in the idea that Yu Menglong's final gift to the world was not a performance, but a silence. In the space he leaves behind, the world has room to reflect, to reevaluate, to remember what it has lost and why it mattered. He reminds us that life is finite, but impact is infinite. That art, when made with sincerity, does not die with its maker. That love, once given, cannot be taken back. His death is justice because it underlines these truths, carving them into collective consciousness with the precision of a final bow. Even now, as candles burn and tributes flow, one can imagine him smiling, not with arrogance, not with regret, but with the quiet satisfaction of someone who has fulfilled his role. For in truth, Yu Menglong's life was a performance, not in pretense, but in purpose. He gave himself to others, and in doing so, he achieved a form of immortality that even death cannot undo. Justice, in the end, is not about the length of years, but about the depth of meaning. Yu Menglong's years, though not countless, were deep enough to ripple through time. His justice is not in the silence of his grave, but in the voices that continue to speak his name. So let us not mourn him only with tears, but with remembrance, with gratitude, with the courage to live as sincerely as he did. Let his death remind us of the fleeting nature of life and the enduring power of love. The justice of Yu Menglong's death begins not with the silence of his final breath, but with the echo of everything that led him there. In the theater of life, justice is rarely immediate. It ripens over time, like a fruit hidden beneath layers of shadow, waiting for light. For Yu, his justice was not about triumph in the public eye, but about the intimate, often invisible victories that few were allowed to see. The stage may have given him a platform, but his truest battles were fought far from the cameras, in rooms filled only with the whispers of doubt, the ink of half-written lyrics, the flicker of a desk lamp at 3 in the morning. To understand the justice of his death, one must return to those hidden spaces, for it is there his story speaks loudest. Picture him in his younger years, sitting alone in a small apartment, staring at a blank page. The city outside is alive, neon lights flashing against windows, strangers rushing past, laughter ringing out of tea houses. Yet inside, there is only him and the stubborn silence of unwritten words. The industry had not yet welcomed him. Fame was still a dream hanging beyond the horizon, but his determination was already fierce. Each chord he strummed on his guitar was a promise, each note sung into the emptiness of night a quiet rebellion. This was not a boy chasing fortune. This was a soul demanding justice from the universe, insisting that his voice deserved to be heard. Years later, when he finally stepped into the light, it was not luck that carried him, but the countless nights of unseen labor. Justice, even then, was slow but certain. His rise was not meteoric, not sudden. It was a patient unfolding, the kind of ascent that speaks not to destiny, but to discipline. And when his roles began to capture hearts, when his gentle smile on screen melted even the most cynical of viewers, it felt as though justice itself had finally bowed before him, acknowledging the sacrifices he had endured to get there. Yet the irony of justice is that it never arrives without a price. For every smile he shared with the world, there were nights he swallowed loneliness whole. For every award, every accolade, there was a shadow of exhaustion that no applause could erase. Imagine him leaving a stage, the crowd still screaming his name, and walking back to an empty dressing room. The makeup still fresh on his skin, the costume heavy on his shoulders, but the silence around him deafening. Justice, it seemed, was always double-edged, granting him recognition while stealing away the peace that once came with obscurity. And now, in the stillness of his absence, we are left to reinterpret those scenes. The justice of his death is not in the tragedy of a life cut short, but in the revelation it gives us that even the brightest stars burn at a cost, and that to truly honor him is to recognize the weight he carried with grace. His departure forces us to look closer, to see the man behind the actor, the dreamer behind the idol. And in this seeing, we grant him justice that perhaps the world denied him while he lived. There is another scene, more haunting, but equally beautiful. A concert hall dimmed, filled with fans clutching light sticks that glow like constellations. Yu stands at the center, microphone in hand, eyes closed as his voice threads through the air like silk. He sings not as though performing, but as though confessing, each lyric a fragment of his soul, each note a drop of truth. The audience listens in reverent silence, caught between reality and dream. They do not know, cannot know, that this moment will become immortalized, replayed endlessly after his passing. But in that instant, time itself bends. His voice does not belong to the present alone. It is already carving itself into eternity. The justice of his death lies here, too, that even in his absence, his voice continues to soothe, to heal, to exist beyond the confines of his body. For those who loved him, his death feels like theft. But in truth, it is also a form of justice, cruel though it may seem. Justice because it crystallizes what mattered most, stripping away the noise, the criticism, the relentless expectations. Now, what remains are the purest moments. His laughter caught on camera, his characters etched into memory, his music replayed in quiet rooms. The world can no longer demand from him. It can only remember. And in remembering, there is justice, for he is no longer a commodity, but a legend, no longer measured by schedules and contracts, but by the love he inspired. Even the streets of Shanghai seem to echo with this justice. Fans gather in candlelight vigils, their voices rising in song, their tears mixing with the rain. Strangers hold hands, united by the invisible thread of his memory. In the glow of candles, his face appears not only on posters and phone screens, but in the hearts of everyone present. The justice of his death manifests here, in the unity of grief turned into devotion. Death has done what life could not, stripped away divisions, silenced judgment, and allowed only love to remain. And what of Yu himself? One can imagine him walking beyond the veil, his burdens falling away like heavy cloaks. The noise of the world grows distant, replaced by a stillness he long yearned for. There is no need to perform, no need to endure. Justice comes to him not as thunder, but as a whisper. Rest now, you have done enough. He looks back at the world he leaves behind and sees the lights, the songs, the tears, the love. And perhaps for the first time, he smiles without reservation, knowing that he is free. The continuation of his story belongs, now, to those who live on. Justice demands not only remembrance, but transformation. To honor Yu Menglong is to live with the sincerity he embodied, to cherish gentleness in a world that often mistakes it for weakness. It is to continue singing, dreaming, loving with the courage he showed. His justice is fulfilled not only in his peace, but in the choices of those he touched. In every fan who refuses to forget, in every artist who dares to be vulnerable, in every soul that finds courage through his memory, Yu Menglong lives again. The curtain has fallen, but the performance lingers. His justice is not a verdict, but a legacy, a reminder that even in death there can be triumph. He has exited the stage, yes, but the applause has not ceased. It grows louder, reverberating through time, ensuring that his name, his spirit, his truth will never be forgotten. This is the justice of Yu Menglong's death, that in leaving he has finally achieved what life could not give him: immortality.